Today I talked with Eric Morse from the Moody Church in Chicago. This is one of the oldest megachurches in the country. They have a rich history and have impacted thousands of people for more than 155 years. However, they see themselves as a young church with a very bright future. They just hired a new lead pastor, and the future is looking really, really bright at Moody. Now, Eric serves as the communication director, and he gives us some really good insight into how they hired their new senior pastor and the challenges that he faces every day being in a major city. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Well, hey, Eric, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm glad that you could carve out some time to talk with me.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So you guys, you're in one of the oldest mega churches in the country. Been around for 140 or 150 years, something like that.
155 years, 1864.
Wow. But yet it still probably feels like a brand new church because of your lead pastor, huh?
Yeah, we just hired our new senior pastor via Zoom. So we might be one of the first churches that have ever done that. It's a really exciting time for our church, and just being able to use that technology was something certainly new for us. And I know it's really new and still being used for a lot of other churches kind of across the country to connect congregants and small groups and prayer meetings. So we're using it for that here at our church. But the vote was really historic. We ended up having over 700, almost 800 people connect via Zoom. They were asking questions live during a large congregational meeting. And then we had to send out a survey monkey to kind of collect their votes in real time. We had a backup with a phone bank that was staffed by many of our staff members, and we pulled it off by God's grace. It was a really, I'm going to say somewhat stressful time, but it was also a really blessed time, seeing how the Lord kind of used this for his glory. He provided in a really powerful way, really significant way. And we're just really excited for the new era that our church is entering into this summer.
Yeah, and so as the director of communications, that's got to be kind of exciting because you guys have a huge footprint. I mean, you're in the heartbeat of Chicago, right in the downtown area. You reach a lot of people. Brand new lead pastor. You know, it's got to be kind of exciting times for you, even though we're in the midst of all the chaos and with COVID and everything. It's I'm sure you're excited about what you get to do moving into the future and how you're going to communicate and connect with more people.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time. I mean, all of our ministry has moved online. So that's kind of a totally new shift for us. Yeah. We're a really large congregation. Our sanctuary has like 3,700 something odd seats. They even have little wire racks underneath each seat so that people use when they used to wear hats. So they still all have those. So we have a large sanctuary, a large building, but it's not being used right now. And so everything that we're doing is now moved online, from our services to our small groups to our prayer meetings, Sunday school classes. So we've really had to kind of shift how we're approaching ministry. And I think for us, that's kind of upcycled a lot of the new technology upgrades that we've had to kind of implement over the last couple months. We made some changes to our online streaming. So we're now, we were using another platform before that didn't have live chat capabilities. We've now transitioned to a platform called Church Online Platform, where we're able to engage with people in real time. We also stream to YouTube, so we're pulling in audience members from that huge social media network. And we've seen just kind of an incredible growth in the number of people who are connecting with us on Sundays and throughout the week. It's really been surprising. We probably quadrupled our online audience since March, which was a huge jump for us. Just seems to be growing and growing and growing. I think the longer term trajectory of that, though, is what do we do once we start meeting again? You know, are people going to start coming back to church? Are they still going to engage with us in the same way? Are they going to show up physically? Or are they still going to be kind of inculcated in wearing pajamas to church and just doing church at home? We don't know what that's going to look like. So those are kind of some big issues we're going to have to sort through as a church and as a leadership. But for now, the Lord's really blessed, I think, church ministry online, and it's exciting to see the things that he's doing with that.
Yeah, I would think that as you can go back to in person now, as you said, that's going to be a new normal, and who knows what that looks like. Some churches that we work with are currently, we're in the middle, like almost the latter part of June, And there are churches that are doing in person, while others are waiting, and for a few months, or even maybe even the next year. Don't really know. But that will be interesting to see what you guys, because you have such a unique, you're in a unique area, right? So how you do in-person church and keep the online church growing. I'm imagine you want to continue to grow your online church platform.
Yeah, I think absolutely. At our church, our philosophy is to really prioritize in-person attendance. So as we go forward with reopening the church, we have a phased reopening plan kind of in place. As we go forward with that, we really want to be encouraging people. If you're watching online, come check us out in person, because that's really where we feel the core elements of the church come together as they're biblically kind of commanded. We really prioritize in-person gatherings. So that's not to say that there's not a great fit for some people to watch online. If you can't make it one Sunday, you can catch the sermon online later. We do believe that online audience is a great kind of first step or a front door to the church. Yeah. So connecting with people online like that is a great kind of entree to who we are in our ministries. And we want to be able to effectively engage people in that medium. But we also want to make sure that we're actively calling them to action to come back to the church. Come check us out in person, get to know people, because we really think that that's where church, it blossoms and where people have the most kind of biblical experiences.
That I like your thinking in that, where it's almost like sort of a funnel. You can get people online to engage, watch, kind of even from a distance, but you're not satisfied with that. So you really want to drive them to in-person church, where that's a little unique. I mean, you have so many people around you. It's not as if you're trying to reach the entire state of Illinois, although why not? But you've got millions of people right around you because of your location. So that's a pretty smart thing to do, is to drive traffic online and get them in person.
Yeah, and websites are really important with that. So a few years ago, we redid our website kind of with that in mind. The website and online streaming, as many of your audience members know, that's the front door of the church. So we really want to kind of encourage people to have great experiences when they first come to your webpage, great experiences with your online streaming, but then how do we kind of capture them on the back end? It's kind of funny with COVID happening. We had plans in place. We had a new hospitality ministry that was starting up in March. We renovated part of our church actually with what's called the Connection Center to create a space where people who are going to come in for the first time are going to be able to connect with a real live person, get their questions answered, kind of follow up with what's the next step to take at Moody Church. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, there's stay-at-home orders. So we haven't really been able to kind of unfurl that or use it yet, but it's in place. And we think it's going to be a really key part of our ministry going forward.
Oh, yeah, I would think so. I mean, that you put a lot of effort into that. So,
we did.
It's all in God's timing, but as soon as you guys get back in person, that's going to be a great tool for you to engage people.
It'll be used eventually.
So, when you guys, what are some of the hurdles that you think are going to happen for you? Because 3,700 seats, I mean, it's a big worship center. You got a big church, and have you guys thought about your plans on how you go back to getting in person? What are you guys thinking there?
Yeah, Chicago's kind of an unusual, I don't know if it's an unusual city, but we're a little more restricted than maybe some other cities where people are spaced a little further apart. So current guidelines in the city of Chicago are for no meetings larger than 50. So at a church where we have 2,200 members and we might have roughly 1,500 to 2,000 people that would show up on a normal Sunday, we can't really do that for really an extended period of time, at least safely. Nor can we have enough services kind of back to back in a multi-service setting where it's going to be able to, I think, serve all those people in a meaningful way. If you have to wear masks, if you're too spread out, is the church experience really the same? Are you still kind of worshiping how you want to worship? And I know that there's a lot of feelings, emotions, ideas kind of on either side, but our church is really trying to follow the city of Chicago guidelines in terms of what's best practices for health and bringing people back to church safely. So I think at our church, we've kind of set a limit on, we're going to start encouraging full attendance in our services once we can start meeting at least at 500 people, and we will probably phase it out to where we'll do multiple services at that point. But in the meantime, we're going to really be encouraging small groups and what we call our community groups, or adult Sunday school classes, to be meeting either in person at people's homes around the city, or we're going to be planning a way for them to meet physically at the church building. We have a lot of different rooms where we can space people out safely. We're still working on those plans, but I think that's our long-term trajectory over the summer and into the fall. And once we can meet safely at a high enough level, we'll do that. And people, I think, will want to come back to it, but we're not quite sure if that's going to be, by August or September, October. It's kind of all really up in the air. One of the steps we're taking is to try to survey our congregation to get a sense of where are they at, what do they feel safe with, when do they feel ready to come back to church. Just the way that our building is set up, we've had to kind of reorient where our cameras are now for online streaming. Like many of the other more modern churches across the country that might have been built for streaming or a live online audience just to start. Our church it's historic, so putting cameras in different unique locations is not as easy. We can't shift as quickly. So we have cameras now in the front of the sanctuary blocking, this amazing middle section where a lot of people would normally sit and kind of watch the service from the front row. So when we come back to an in-person experience, it's really going to shift, I think, how we do online experiences too. So we don't have a great plan for that yet. We're thinking about it as leadership, but I imagine that other churches, maybe like ours, are having to deal with that too. How do you transition from 100% online experience to a hybrid model? It's probably a next step, and then maybe back to full in-person attendance. It's not going to be smooth. We probably won't get it right at all steps of the process, but we are thinking about it and planning ahead.
So you guys are, historically you're an old church, but you're like a brand new church with a new lead pastor. What's going to be the direction in terms of how you reach younger families or continue to grow younger as a church?
Great question. Maybe one of the more important questions for older churches like ours. We've really doubled down and invested in our children's ministry, so we feel like that is a key component of attracting young families. Families, if they're going to come to church and meet other people, they want to make sure that they have similar peers that they can connect with, other families they can connect with. So the whole second floor of our church is geared primarily towards kids ministry. Second and third floor also has some spaces. We've also invested in staffing. So we have a new pastor of young adults who's come in within the past year or so. And we're starting to see a lot more young adults from our neighborhood come in as a result of that, both in the college ministry as well as in a little bit older demographic, young professionals like 25 to 35. So I think when churches, when they staff appropriately for that, not just, a lot of churches have college ministries, but do you have like a young adults ministry or young professionals ministry too? Because that can often be a really key demographic for your church to grow into. Yeah. In Chicago, around our neighborhood, we're in downtown Chicago, kind of in the Lincoln Park, Old Town area. And so it's a really unique demographic where we get a lot of young people, singles, those who are either really newly married or they're either really young or they're really old. There's not a lot of young families right around where we're at. Most families tend to move a little bit farther. And so in terms of downtown urban ministry, you really have to get creative in terms of how do you staff, what kind of programs do you have, how can people get connected in. That's kind of what we're thinking about going forward, at least in terms of investing in the younger people around us.
Yeah, that's probably some pretty big hurdles even for you and what your job is to communicate and market and advertise and promote different things. It's got to be a unique situation for you because of the fact you do have different audiences that are not the typical norm of what most churches are focused on.
Yeah, it's an interesting process to try to put yourself into the shoes of those that you're trying to communicate to, young and old, and we don't always do it perfectly, but we are really trying to think about how we're communicating to different audiences. One of the big shifts we've made is from kind of investing in advertising that was traditional print advertising, newspapers, local publications, things like that. we're now doing almost exclusively all online advertising, because that's where we feel like people are really, you get a better return on investment, you get a lot more engagement that way, and it's a lot easier to track. So in terms of reaching new audiences in our neighborhood, we're using things like Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads. We've worked with Missional Marketing, and your team just done a great job for our special events. So that's a big shift that we're noticing in terms of how we get our message out to younger audiences, but also older audiences. I mean, audiences in all demographics are really connecting with online and digital marketing, I think, a lot more than they used to. That'll be probably an enduring effect of COVID. It's everybody's doing online marketing, everybody's shopping online. A return to print or a return to more traditional forms probably isn't going to happen, at least quickly. I don't think that's to say that church signage isn't important. We've certainly done some stuff around our church building for people who are driving by and walking. You want to make sure that people know that you're a church, that you're either open or kind of what's your unique brand. But digital is really the way that we're going in the future.
So I'm really curious as to, now that you got 5 years to get a new lead pastor. Wow. Yeah. But now that you have this, your leader coming in here in July, have you thought about how you're going to kind of promote that? Mm-hmm. I did see the press release.
Yeah, great question. Press release was kind of step one. So we created a list to communicate that news out as broadly as we could. Our next step over the next couple of weeks, though, is just like I said, we're going to be doing a lot of digital marketing. We connect organically with people well through our website and Google search. YouTube's a great driver, I think, of traffic to our live stream in the morning. But we want the local population to know that we're open for business. We got a new senior pastor who's going to be preaching on content that's really relevant to you at this time. And so we think that just by using those tools, it'll really increase our online viewership over the next couple of weeks. I think what's probably more unusual about this time is we might get a lot of great online viewers over the next few weeks, but how do we keep them engaged? I think that's a longer term strategic question of how do you track engagement, or how do you connect with people in an online environment that we could normally do if we're in person. You can always have those handshakes, you can connect with people after the service. So we're trying to think of creative ways where people can continue the community experience that they've had in a live service after the service. And so we've got something we're doing now. It's called a live Q&A. We've got the preachers being interviewed, kind of take another step deeper into the message after the service. People can just kind of keep watching right after our service is over. They can ask questions live and interact a little bit more with him and with each other. We also do a lot of online communities or adult Sunday schools after class. So we're pushing that option a lot more in our end of service announcements, really calling people to kind of take another step into their worship experience for that morning, take another step to get to know some other people. We know that can be challenging with Zoom or with other online options. I know I have Zoom fatigue, we all do kind of, but it's kind of where we're at. And I think people recognize that, but I think offering those opportunities for people to connect one-on-one or in smaller groups with church is so important right now. Church at its best, I think, happens when people are in community, when they're actively engaged. I think long-term, we have to fight against kind of the consumer mentality of church, where it's, you can get great preaching, you get great music really anywhere, kind of on demand. But you're going to be missing out with getting to know the body of Christ, serving the body of Christ in person if you're not connected in, if you're not engaging. So that's a really important, I think, philosophy for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd say, for churches that are watching this, those that are hiring a new leader, you want to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And I often say that to churches. It's like, you've got this opportunity. He's, Pastor Phillips is stepping in, right? And so you've just got a small window to let everybody know we've got a brand new leader. And so people are going to want to test drive him. They're going to want to kind of listen to him and check him out and determine if they want to start to follow and even show up to Moody and that be their home church.
Absolutely.
That's a short window, it seems like these days. But it sounds like you're going to go kind of all in on making sure.
Yep. We're doing our best. He's got a summer series coming up, so we're going to hit that hard with marketing and try to get some people to kind of buy into this new era for who we are and the new leader that we have. We'll also do another big campaign in the fall. I think the summer is going to be an important few months, but I think fall also back to church, back to school. Who knows if we'll be back to school or not at that point. At least in Chicago, we're still working through that as a city, but I think that's another key time. So between now and Christmas time, we're going to just do a ton of promotions for our ministries, whether we're back meeting in person or we're still meeting online. It's a really key time, I think, for people. And it's a really key marketing time for our church.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so what are some of the hurdles that you, as in your position, in your spot, mega church, downtown Chicago, not your typical family unit that you're trying to connect with that most churches, maybe in the suburbs, that's what they do. Yeah. What are some of the big hurdles for you as a leader in your position?
The hurdle, I think, is understanding and identifying your target audience. That's a huge challenge. You can look at demographic data. You can look at, there's a whole bunch of organizations that are doing market research and data research. Sometimes it's hard to know how to translate that into a church language or language that's going to be read by a non-church member. So that's a real key. There's really two distinct audiences. You're talking to people in your own church, and you've got language, you've got culture, you've got history, you've got lingo that connects well with your target audience in your church. And then you've got to think about how you're connecting with the target audience outside your church that doesn't know who you are. You got to communicate branding. You got to communicate things that meet their felt needs. What are they struggling with? What do they need to know? And how can your church kind of help fill that gap? Those are the really big challenges. Chicago it's a huge city. It's multi-ethnic, multi-generational. So communication doesn't always hit everybody perfectly. And I think one of the big hurdles is sometimes you're trying to craft the perfect communication for everyone, and you don't get it. You can't do it perfectly. So I think for us, we're working on targeting our communication to specific audiences. So we'll send Facebook ads out, for example, to younger demographics and older demographics. We'll have two different kinds of ads for both of those. And we'll see different click-through rates for both of those too. The messaging probably isn't drastically different, but it might be depending on what we're trying to promote or what we're trying to do. Christmas marketing, Easter marketing, those are going to have different demographic approaches. Young people are going to be looking at Christmas a little bit differently than maybe some older demographics that are looking for maybe more traditional or Hallmark card style advertising, whereas the younger people are going to be looking for something else. What's your church doing to reach out to others during Christmas time? How are you serving? Or is there a missional aspect of Christmas for your church? So those are the kind of things that we're thinking through and trying to adjust to the different audiences that we have around us and the different audiences we're trying to connect with.
Yeah. Wow. You have your hands full.
It's fun. It's a great blessing. Be a
yeah.
part of it.
It's never a dull moment, is it?
Never a dull moment. Always something.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for kind of sharing, a little bit about Moody Church and what you guys have going on. It's exciting to hear that one of the oldest mega churches kind of has a new, fresh start, almost in a sense, right? And so, a lot of energy and growth and excitement around there, and we'll be watching, and we're excited to see how you guys are going to continue to reach more people.
Thanks, Jason. We're thrilled, and thanks to your team too for all the great work you've done for us over the years. It's been a real blessing for us too.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Yeah, it makes it fun to work with churches that get it, and they're after people that are far from God, that are just dealing with struggles and issues and felt need kinds of things, and we can help connect them to a local church that's going to share the gospel and lead them to Jesus. So, love working with you guys. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Right on.
All right, take care. We'll talk to you soon.
All righty.
Well, thanks again, Eric. We learned a lot about what they are doing to grow their church. And man, Moody is making a huge impact in the city of Chicago. What stood out to me is the focus on content. Having content on your website is critically important. Now, here at Missional Marketing, we have many, many landing pages ready to deploy at your church. We talk about all kinds of topics on these felt need landing pages. We want to answer the question when somebody is searching. And no doubt, like Moody Church, just like your church, there are tons of people, thousands, if not maybe even millions, if you're in a large city like Chicago, of people that are searching for help with a felt need all the time in Google. I encourage you to see these pages that can be branded to your church. And if you would like to look deeper, hit us up on our website and we can talk and review those felt need landing pages with you. And I hope you enjoy it. So until next time, we'll talk to you soon.